Ahlul Sunnah wal Jama'ah considered to be the consensus of the Sahaba that Abu Bakr was the Khalifa. Sa'id bin Zayd was asked, متى بويع لأبي بكر? When was the bay'ah given to Abu Bakr? He said the same day Rasulullah ﷺ passed away, because كرهوا أن يبقوا بعض يوم وليسوا في جماعة, because the Sahaba did not want to stay for even one day without a jama'ah. So they did it the same day Rasulullah ﷺ passed away, even before he was buried. You know, when we talk about the importance of Khilafah, Rasulullah ﷺ passed away, and you had the washing of Rasulullah ﷺ and the burial of Rasulullah ﷺ. And we know that the sunnah is to bury a person as fast as possible. The burial of Rasulullah ﷺ ended up being delayed. He died on Monday, and they say that he was buried Wednesday night, according to some scholars, because the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wanted to sort out the issue of Khilafah first. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, who were before that, before the da'wah of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, were the Arab people, were an unruly people, tribes fighting each other, very independent. They did not want to submit to any leader. But now this collective work was so ingrained in them that they considered it to be not appropriate for them to stay even for a day without having an Amir who would run their affairs. And they gave that precedence over washing Rasulullah ﷺ and burying him. And they were discussing this issue even though their hearts were broken because of the death of Rasulullah ﷺ. They were discussing it the same day Rasulullah ﷺ passed away. And that shows you the importance of the issue of Khilafah in our life. And the Muslims being in a jama'ah and somebody being in the position of leadership to run and manage their affairs. So it's an ijma' of the scholars. Al-Baqillani says, وَكَانَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ مَفْرُوضُ الطَّاعَةِ لِإِجْمَاعِ الْمُسْلِمِينَ عَلَى طَاعَتِهِ. It was the ijma' of the Muslims to obey Abu Bakr as-Siddiq رضي الله عنه. Now the issue of Khilafah and Khalifa again, Al-Imam al-Mawardi, who's considered to be one of the greatest scholars of Islam, the classical scholars of Islam in political issues, he wrote a book called Al-Ahkam al-Sultaniyah, the laws of governance. He says, فَكَانَتْ الْإِمَامَةِ أَصْلًا عَلَيْهِ اسْتَقَرَّتْ قَوَاعِدِ الْمِلَّةِ. The issue of having an imam means leader, was one of the fundamentals of the religion. And he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ جَلَّتْ قُدْرَتُهُ نَدَبَ لِلْأُمَّةِ زَعِيمًا خَلَفَ بِهِ النُّبُوَّةِ وَحَاطَ بِهِ الْمِلَّةِ. Allah Azza wa Jal wanted the ummah to have a leader who would succeed the prophethood. So the position of Khilafah is so important that he is the successor of prophethood. And he is the one who fulfills the role that the prophet used to fulfill in his life. And that's why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radhiyallahu anhu was called Khalifat Rasulullah, the successor of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. إِلَّمْ تَجِدِينِي فَأْتِي أَبَا بَكْرٍ. If you don't find me, then go to Abu Bakr. He was the deputy of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What is the hukum of Khilafah? Is it sunnah? Is it mubah? Is it wajib? What's the hukum of it? Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani, he comments on the statement made by one scholar, his name is Dawudi, that establishing Khilafah is sunnah mu'akkada. So Ibn Hajar responds to that. Now the evidence that Dawudi uses is the fact that the bay'ah to Abu Bakr wasn't given until hours after Rasulullah passed away. So he said, since they stayed for a few hours without a Khalifa, it means that it is sunnah mu'akkada. Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani comments on that and he says, وَتُعُقِّبَ بِالْإِتِّفَاقِ عَلَى فَرْضِيَّتِهَا وَبِأَنَّهُمْ تَرَكُوا لِأَجْلِ إقامتها أعظم المهمات وهو التشاغل بدفن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم حتى فرغوا منها والمدة المذكورة زمن يسير في بعض يوم يغتفر مثله لاجتماع الكلمة. He says, but that is not the view of the scholars. The view of the scholars, and it is their consensus. Ibn Hajar says their consensus that it is mandatory, that it is fard. And to say that because they waited for a few hours, he said, waiting for a few hours to bring together the unity among the Muslims is acceptable. If waiting for a few hours is going to bring the ummah together and unify them, it's acceptable. And this is the fastest possible time they could establish the Khilafah, within a few hours. But Ibn Hajar al-Asqalani makes it very clear that it is fard. And it is the consensus of the Sahaba because they did it before they even buried Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We sometimes establish our religious views based on what is the predominant case around us. So we think because this is how we are now, this is the right way to be. Some people now, because there is no imara and khilafah in Islam today, they think that it's absolutely fine and there's no problem in that. Brothers and sisters, if one of the Sahaba was alive today, they would ask Allah Azza wa Jal to take away their soul. They would refuse to live the life that many Muslims are happy to lead today. The Sahaba radiallahu anhum, when they were in Mecca, when the da'wah was just starting, and there was only 38 Muslims on the face of the earth, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu went to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and said, it shouldn't be a secret da'wah, we have to make it public. And as soon as the Sahaba reached over 100, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was now starting for a base to establish his government and move to Medina. He could have continued staying in Mecca. He was protected by his uncle Al-Abbas. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was not being harmed physically. Yes, there were threats against his life, but his da'wah was going on. But Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, for the last few years of his da'wah in Mecca, was asking for nusrah, asking for support. So the Sahaba radiallahu anhum, they couldn't stand seeing Islam being humiliated. They couldn't stand seeing the Muslims being humiliated. And now this is something perfectly normal and acceptable to some Muslims. This is not a way of life that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum would be happy with. It's not even a way of life that they would be willing to live. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away and they didn't bury him yet, and they are already meeting to discuss the issue of appointing a Khalifa among them. I mean, do you understand the implications of that? How important they viewed this issue. And as a Muslim ummah, we'll continue suffering setbacks and problems as long as we don't sort out this issue. Look at how many family problems exist in this society. Among the Muslims, I'm not talking about the non-Muslims. How many family problems are going around? How many financial problems are going around? And when I say financial problems, a person could be a millionaire, but they're going through financial problems because the rizq is coming from haram. How pure is the rizq that Muslims are making? All of these are issues that cannot be sorted out unless we establish this system. For example, take the issue of mortgage. There's debate. Some say haram, some say halal. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. If you deal with mortgage, you're dealing with something that is haram, riba. And if you stay away from it, then you're paying more in rent. And Muslims want a magical solution for these problems. There is not going to be any solution until you bring back the law of Allah, the hukm of Allah in your life. We are looking for solutions for family problems, problems between the husband and wife, problems between the children and parents. These are not going to be solved unless we are living under an Islamic system. The barakah in living is when it is under the Khilafah of Allah Azza wa Jal. The most blessed time in the history of this ummah was when they were living under the Khulafa of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abu Bakr, Umar, Uthman, Ali, Umar bin Abdul Aziz. So this should be on the mind of everyone, to bring back the law and the hukm of Allah Azza wa Jal. And on the other side, if anybody thinks that Khilafah can be established without the path of jihad, is mistaken. Because Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu says, and we'll talk about his statement in his khutbah, وَمَا تَرَكَ قَوْمٌ الْجِهَادِ فِي سَبِيلِ اللَّهِ إِلَّا ذَلُّوا. Any people who leave the mandate of jihad are going to be humiliated. It's the qadr of Allah Azza wa Jal. It's going to happen. And then he asked the Muslims to stand up and give bay'ah to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu anhu. So the one who would carry the initiative in a lot of the major events of the ummah was Umar bin Khattab radiyallahu anhu. He was the first one to put his hand in the hand of Abu Bakr in the Saqifah and give him bay'ah. And now he is the one who is arranging the general bay'ah of the Muslims. So the Muslims started standing up one by one, placing their hand in the hand of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu and giving him bay'ah. What does bay'ah mean? The literal meaning of bay'ah is a transaction, a sale. If I sell you something, that transaction is called bay'ah. So that word was borrowed in this context to carry a new meaning, and that is a covenant between two parties. Just like in a financial transaction, you have two parties and both parties consent to this trade. I mean, there must be consent when there's a financial transaction that happens. I cannot sell you this if I don't want to, and you will not buy it if you don't want it. So both parties agree, and they would shake hands to finalize that agreement. So the shaking of the hand symbolizes the agreement of both sides. It means that both of us agree, and we do that by the shaking of the hand. And even until this day, this tradition carries on among Muslims and non-Muslims. The deal is finalized by the shaking of the hand. So that meaning was borrowed and was used to refer to the relationship between the leader and the followers and the covenant that is between them. And that is bay'ah. It's a pledge of an allegiance to a leader. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam took bay'ah from the Ansar radiallahu anhum in Bay'at al-Aqabah. And he took a pledge of allegiance from women. And he took pledge of allegiance from individuals. He took a pledge of allegiance from one man that you don't ask anybody for anything. And the pledge could be on different issues. So bay'ah, there's a minor bay'ah and there's a major bay'ah. A minor bay'ah is on a particular issue, while the major bay'ah is on the Khilafah. The major bay'ah is the Khilafah. And that is where the hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that's the context of the hadith. من مات وليس في عنقه بيعة مات ميتة جاهلية. If you die and you don't have a bay'ah in your neck, then you're dying in the way of jahiliyyah, the way of ignorance, pre-Islam. And notice the word here, في رقبته, in his neck. Bay'ah is something that you can't get out of if you enter. Bay'ah is something that there's no way of breaking it, and if a person commits to it, they must commit to it until the rest of their life. And that's why Rasulullah said it's like tied around your neck. You can't get it out. So when the Sahaba would give Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu bay'ah, they know that it's a serious thing. And when they gave the bay'ah to Rasulullah before that, they knew it's a serious thing. So when the Ansar were told by Rasulullah, I want you to give me the bay'ah that you will protect me from what you protect your families and wealth, the Ansar knew the implications of that. So one of them stood up before they give the bay'ah, and he told the Ansar, do you know what you're getting into? This is something that will cause you a lot of enemies. And people are going to point their swords towards you. So he's telling them this thing that we're about to do right now. And then he said, if you feel that you're not able to carry it out, pull out of it now before it's too late. Because after we give the bay'ah, we can't walk out. So they asked Rasulullah, that's what you want from us? What's our part of the agreement? Because the bay'ah is a two-way thing. It's not a one-way relationship, it's two ways. So they said, that's your part of the agreement, what is ours? Rasulullah did not promise them kingdom, did not promise them a salary, did not promise them wealth. He said, لَكُمُ الْجَنَّةِ, I promise you paradise. They said, رَبِحَ الْبَيْعِ لَا نَقِيلُ وَلَا نَسْتَقِيلُ. They said, what a profitable trade. We will never give up. What's better than Jannah?